Happy Valentine's Day. Now, I bet you ladies were not slapped on the bum with animal hides to encourage fertility, were you? That's exactly what this pagan festival called Lupercalia did in ancient Rome. Only in the Middle Ages did Valentine's Day become a celebration of love, and that was because people believed that birds started their mating season on February the 14th. With that rather strange tidbit about Valentine's Day, welcome to Kaleidoscope, where we are positive, daring, different. Today on the show, Barred and Scarred, an award-winning hiking trail and finding artistry in scrap metal. A hearty thank you to Srilanka Live CDB and the Daily Morning for being awesome partners on the show. Like what you see, don't forget to subscribe, follow and like us. Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn.
CDB Hybrid Leasing. Enjoy exclusive interest rate and much more for hybrids, plug-in hybrids and EV vehicles.
Let's have a look at the week that was on CDB Snapshot. Good news, the Governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka affirms positive signs of a 3% growth in the economy. Central Bank purchases almost $246 million from the domestic market in January. Sri Lanka launches unique payment interface, a digital payment method used by Indians in the country. This year's Paris Olympics has a special feature, pieces of the original Eiffel Tower in each medal. British Vogue features 40 of its most iconic cover stars for Edward Ellifool's final issue as editor. 100-year-old Thagia Askari performs a dive at the 2024 World Diving Championships.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Srilanka Life.
Welcome to Srilanka Life News Capsule. The Pico Trail, the first walking and hiking trail within the Serendipity Trails concept of discovering Sri Lanka on foot, was just awarded the Best Wider World Tourism Project Award by the British Guild of Travel Writers. Known as one of Asia's best-kept secrets, the trail is 300 kilometers long and cuts through the Central Highlands. The development of the trail was funded by the EU and USAID and designed by entrepreneur, travel and tourism consultant, Condé Nast's top traveler specialist for Sri Lanka and founder of Sustainable Sri Lanka, Miguel Kunal. Welcome, Miguel. A little more information on the Pico Trail, please.
First and foremost, it stimulates a very healthy activity, right? Amongst Sri Lankans. You know, we've had a history where it's been difficult to get around, it's been difficult to have your kids sort of go off and do something and things like that into the wilderness or whatever. So I think we're entering a new phase in which Sri Lankans themselves, especially the people in the Colombo district, which are in manager positions, middle manager positions, CEOs, and the economic heart of the country, if you like, in terms of all those guys are now hiking. All those guys there's a connection with nature, with their own country, and also I think that's going to stimulate more sort of a better understanding of what we need to protect, what we need to, how we need to, to not kill. Like, this is a golden goose.
The Pico Trail covers a lot of ground in 22 stages, starting in Kandy and passing through Haputale, Hatton and Alla to end up at Norelia.
It's a tool to stimulate a particular type of demand from a particular type of segment, which is, I would say, typically more independently minded, more responsible in a sense, wanting to do a type of activity in Sri Lanka that they want to engage with local communities, go off the beaten path and things like that. So it's really the antithesis of mass tourism. It's a tool that brings in, it calls for a type of tourism that is the antithesis of the problems that we have as derived from the mass tourism distribution that happens when we just promote Sigiriya and the Temple of the Tooth. Other than that, as you all know, it's Sri Lanka's first long-distance hiking trail, 22 days, 300 kilometers, 80 villages, lots of opportunity. It's wonderful. It's really great.
The first of its kind in Sri Lanka, the long-distance trail leads its wanderers through tea plantations, lush landscapes and some spectacular scenery. In this context of the Pico Trail, where would you like to see Sri Lanka on the global tourism map?
In actual fact, the Pico Trail, because of the characteristics, there's no winter, there's no snow, there's no ice. It's pretty much all year round, and it's low elevation, and you kind of always end up having a lovely sort of cup of tea somewhere, right? Hopefully, you know, artisanal teas. But you end up, you know, there's always there's a layer of culture and history and nature. You know, there's lots of things to it. So, but it's very broad based. So I would like to see, and I think we're beginning to see Sri Lanka reposition as one of the most interesting, one of the best hiking destinations in the world.
Now for a quick sneak peek at our markets today. The all-share price index at the Colombo Stock Exchange remained unchanged this week, with low investor interest leading to turnover levels of less than 1 billion rupees per day. Oil prices dropped slightly to $82 per barrel this week after US crude stocks rose more than expected and supply continued to outstrip demand. The US dollar hit a 3-month peak this week, leading to gold prices dropping below $2,000 per ounce. Music's biggest night, the Grammy Awards, was last week, and the stars really went all out with the fashion statements on the red carpet. Happy Chinese New Year! As we enter the Year of the Dragon, here's a look at how Chinatowns across the globe celebrated in style. Sri Lanka's prisons is a topic often ignored in favour of discussions about what kind of people are actually put in prison. The Human Rights Commission paints a grim picture, revealing that the treatment and detention of condemned prisoners fall far below the threshold of basic living standards. As of November 2023, the official capacity of the country's prison system is 11,768 inmates, but the occupancy level is at a whopping 220.7%. The prison population has been increasing from 16,000 odd in 2000 to almost 26,000 inmates in 2020. And it seems that there are more people behind bars than ever. Discussing the gritty truth is scientist, conservationist and public policy advocate Rohan Pethiagoda on today's Let's Talk. Rohan, welcome to Kaleidoscope. What are the most common reasons for imprisonment in Sri Lanka?
About half the 30,000 people who go to prison every year go there because they've been trafficking in drugs. So this shows how serious the drug conviction problem is. But also it highlights other things in society. For example, while Muslim people account for about 10% of the population, 15% of drug convictions are attributable to Muslim men. And drugs are strictly prohibited by Islam. And so I think there are indicators here for community leaders and religious leaders in that community to wake up and say there's something happening to our young men.
How would you describe Sri Lanka's prison population?
Primarily, prison is for poor people. It's very rarely that anyone from a middle or upper class background goes to prison. The other thing is people like you, women, don't get to prison. Only 5% of prisoners are women. 95% are men. So very few people go to prison in Sri Lanka for bribery. Just about 100 every year. And of that, 20% are women, compared with 5% of women in the general prison population. And then you have the problem that 95% of the people in prison did not get educated beyond O levels. So that is a telling indictment. So the best predictors for getting yourself into prison in Sri Lanka are being poorly educated, being poor, and being a man. And that's not a good thing.
How many people remain in prison awaiting trial? Those who can't pay the bail, for instance.
About 2 or 3 times as many people are on remand as are in fact convicted. So about 60 to 90,000 people are on remand in any year. And about 30% of them are on remand for more than 6 months. So remand has become a method of extrajudicial punishment because the judiciary has very little control over remand. The police ask for it or the Attorney General asks for it, they get it. And we've seen egregious miscarriages of justice just in the last year in the case of Shani Abesekara, for example. Here's a senior police officer being put in remand for more than a year at the height of the COVID pandemic, at a time when prisoners were dying at twice the rate as the rest of the population.
So, what is the social impact of imprisonment?
But the social impact, I think, is terrible because here on the one hand you have men. The densest demographic for imprisonment is men in their 30s, and most poorly educated men who are unemployed and in their 30s tend to be married and having children. So you're disrupting the families.
So, as a community, we are very insensitive when it comes to not just the prisoner but also their families and the impact being in prison has on the extended family. As a message to the community, what would you like to say about prisoners and the way we actually treat them?
I think from time immemorial, we have looked at punishment as a means of revenge, as a means of getting even. This is a very primal kind of instinct in humans, just as it is in monkeys and chimpanzees and gorillas. We've all got it. But I think enlightened justice has to be about restoration. Restorative justice, I think, can mean hugely more for the community because it tries to right the wrong rather than just punish the wrongdoer. And this is something we haven't approached yet. If we think about it just as much as today we look back at the era of capital punishment when children at the age of 12 were hanged for trivial offenses and we think how horrible that was, I think future generations will look back at us and say, oh, they imprison people for crime, how strange. Because we know that crime is largely driven, as I was saying, by other factors like poverty, being male. I mean, whose fault is that? And we have to fix those problems. This is largely a phenomenon that emerges from the properties of our brains. It's not the individual who's the criminal. It's very convenient to blame the individual.
Meet Bashit Ranavira, metal sculptor and artist extraordinaire, pioneer of Arya sculptures and metal god. Bashit is reviving the somewhat dying art form of experimental sculpture and using assemblage as his work context. Not only is his art beautiful and good for the planet, but the sheer level of detail will truly blow you away. Bashit is a graduate of the University of Visual and Performing Arts Sri Lanka, and his artistry is a testament to true Sri Lankan ingenuity and talent, and he's on Life in 60 today.
මම ෆලෝ කරන ආටිස්ට් වෙන්නේ ලංකාවේ ප්‍රථමයෙන් සංජය ගී කියන ගේ කියලා සහෝදරයෙක් මගේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලෙම ඉන්න. ඉතින් එයාගෙන් පස්සේ මේ ශාස්ත්‍රයේ දැවැන්තයන් වෙච්ච ප්‍රගීත් මනෝහංශ අයියාගේ නිර්මාණ මම දකිනවා කොළඹ අවට තියෙන දේවල්. ඉතින් ඒ හරහා මම හොයන්න ගන්නවා මොකක්ද මේ කලාව කියන දේ. මම කලා නිර්මාණ කරන භාවිතාව වෙන්නේ ඇසෙම්බ්ලාජ්. එහෙම නැත්නම් එකලස් කිරීම කලාව. ඉතින් අතරම මේක මේ යුරෝපයේ මූලික කොටගත් කියන්නේ ඒ හරහා ආපු සම්ප්‍රදායක් කලා සම්ප්‍රදායක්. ඉතින් ඒකෙදි අපිට අමතක කරන්න බෑ මේ කලාවේ ඇත්තටම නිර්මාපකයා වෙන්නේ පැබ්ලෝ පිකාසෝ. කවුරුත් දන්න පැබ්ලෝ පිකාසෝ ස්පැනිෂ් ආටිස්ට්. ඉතින් එයා 1942 වගේ මට ආසන්න විදිහට මතක විදිහට 42 දී විතර කරනවා බුල්ස් හෙඩ් කියලා ගවහිස කියලා නිර්මාණයක්. බුල්ස් හෙඩ් කියන ගවහිස කියන මූර්ති කලා නිර්මාණය හරහා පැබ්ලෝ පිකාසෝ කියන ආටිස්ට් ලෝකෙට අඳුන්වලා දෙනවා නවමු දෙයක්. මේ කලා නිර්මාණ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය අමුද්‍රව්‍ය හොයාගෙන නම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට කියන්නේ ස්ක්‍රැප් මෙටල් තියෙන යකඩ කඩ ඊට අමතරව පංචිකාවත්ත ප්‍රදේශයෙන් අලුත් යකඩ ඊට අමතරව දැන් වුඩ් ඒ කියන්නේ දිරපු ලී කෑලි වගේ දේවල් මම ගොඩක් වෙලාවට ඇත්තටම කලා නිර්මාණයට අවශ්‍ය විදියට හොයාගෙන සමහරක් විට මුහුදු වෙරළවල් ගංගා වෙරළවල් මොකද ඒ වගේ තියෙනවා ඩැමේජ් වෙලා හේදිලා ගියපු ගොඩාක් කර ඒ කියන්නේ පරණ තාලයට හැදිච්ච දේවල්. ඉතින් වුඩ් වලින් පැත්තෙන් බැලුවොත් ඉතින් ඒවත් එකතු කිරීම කියන කලාවට නිශ්චිත මාධ්‍යයක් නැහැ. ඕනම දෙයක් ප්ලාස්ටික් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. යකඩ, තඹ, පිත්තල ඒ කියන්නේ මේ ලෝකයේ තියෙන ඕනම මැටීරියල් එකක් යූස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ලංකාවට විදේශ විනිමය මේ වෙද්දි නම් ගේන්න යම් තාක් දුරට හැකියලා තිනවා. මොකද මේ දවස්වල එන ලංකාවට එන විදේශිකයන්ට මගේ නිර්මාණ අතරම මිල කරලා ඒවා විකුණලා. ඉතින් ඉදිරියට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ මේ දේවල් තවදුරටත් ලංකාව ඇතුලේ චුට්ටක් ප්‍රචලිත කරලා කලාව ආසා ඕනම කෙනෙක්ට මම කියලා දෙන්නත් ඇත්තටම ආසාවක් තියෙනවා.
It might be a good weekend to add a metal sculpture to your collection. Have a great break. We'll see you next week.